Hello, this is Alyssa Milano. Um, and I'm here not as a celebrity or an actress. I'm here as a mother and an American citizen who's just concerned for so many reasons. Um, the NRA's policies are deadly for women. Andrea Washington was a newly minted Chief Petty Officer in the U.S. Navy. She was also a victim of domestic abuse who was granted a temporary restraining order against her ex-fiancé on September 6th, 2018, after he allegedly kicked her and threatened her with his gun. A hearing to make that order permanent was set for 12 days later, but Chief Washington did not appear for the hearing. That afternoon, she was found shot to death in her home, allegedly by the same man who had abused her. Federal law prohibits those convicted of domestic violence or subject to a permanent domestic violence restraining order from owning guns. There is no such prohibition on those arrested, charged, or subject to a temporary domestic violence restraining order. And it often takes weeks or even months for such an order to be granted. Once granted, it is left up to the states on how to enforce such prohibition on firearms, with many states leaving it up to the offender to report and surrender their guns. The NRA seems to like it that way. In Oregon, the NRA opposed legislation that closed the boyfriend loophole, which allows romantic partners convicted of domestic abuse who never cohabitated with their victims to keep their firearms. It also added convicted stalkers to the list of those prohibited from possessing guns. A number of these states have added so-called red flag laws, which allow those closest to people most likely to commit gun violence to petition judges to remove their guns. Despite paying lip service to supporting these life-saving laws in the harsh glare of the immediate aftermath of Parkland, the NRA has universally opposed them. Both of these are addressed at least partially in the new bipartisan framework spearheaded by Senator Murphy in the wake of the most recent public mass shootings in Buffalo and Uvalde. However, the lead GOP negotiator said yesterday that each provision may need to be scaled back or removed from the final bill as the gun caucus in the Senate begins to complain. If that wasn't bad enough, it gets worse. The NRA has even opposed efforts of state legislatures to create the authority to confiscate the guns of prohibited possessors. It is impossible to draw any other conclusion than the NRA wants domestic abusers to keep their guns. And it's killing women. And it's killing children. Lori Jackson obtained a temporary restraining order against her husband the day before the hearing for a permanent restraining order. He shot her dead and seriously wounded her mother. Stephanie Goodloe was a youth minister in Washington, D.C., who was granted a temporary restraining order against her ex-partner. Days before the hearing on a permanent restraining order, he shot her dead. 57% of women killed as a result of domestic violence are shot. The NRA complains about due process when opposing legislation that could have saved the lives of Lori Jackson and Stephanie Goodloe. It's an infuriating argument. Due process is inherent in obtaining a restraining order. It is issued by a judge or other official empowered to do so. Even in ex parte cases where the subject of the order is not present, sufficient evidence of immediate danger must be presented to a judge to issue a temporary protective order. A full hearing on a longer term or permanent order follows, usually within days or weeks. What's hard to see is just how much due process Lori Jackson, Stephanie Goodloe, or Andrea Washington received before they were executed. As hard to fathom as it is, the NRA's position appears to be, if a man screams to his victim, "As soon as I get out, I'm going to shoot you," while being arrested, he should still be able to keep his gun until convicted or until a permanent restraining order is issued. And police should just be fine with it. It is time for federal law to empower local police to seize firearms from dangerous individuals at the time they are most dangerous and require the confiscation of guns of individuals under any kind of domestic violence restraining order, applying extreme risk protection orders, otherwise known as red flag laws, alongside temporary domestic violence restraining orders and confiscating the guns of the abusers until a hearing on a permanent order is held will save the lives of the victims of their abuse. It should be so easy to do this. For too long, the NRA has seemingly enabled an epidemic of gun violence in this nation. It's especially egregious that their twisted idea of gun rights stretches to keep abusers armed over keeping victims alive. Andrea Washington served a nation that refused to disarm her abuser. It cost her life. The nation needed this brave sailor more than her murderer needed his gun. It is time for Congress to close these dangerous loopholes before more women die at the hands of their abusers. And while they're at it, they should add the already ratified ERA to the Constitution to keep women protected in many other ways. On 9/11, 2,996 people were killed in a terrorist attack on our country. We completely changed the way we travel. We changed the way we police ourselves. We went to war. We even changed the way we borrow books from libraries, spending trillions of dollars in an effort to prevent another tragedy of that scale. In 2021, an average of 3,751 people died from gunshots in America every single month. Every month. This should not be this hard. This should be the easiest thing in the world for our government to do, to look at the carnage in our country and to have the basic humanity to act. I have no idea how any human, let alone any elected official, can look at 19 dead children in Uvalde and think that the NRA's perversion of the Second Amendment is more important than the next classroom full of children just like them. Thank you. Thank you, everybody. Love you all.